Hi, thanks for hanging out with me. Throughout this video series, I've been featuring a clock, a key, and a net, 3 gifts that are being unveiled for the Bride of Christ at her midnight hour in age-to-age timekeeping, and that is happening now. I've been highlighting activity that occurs at midnight within our scriptures because the midnight hour activity foreshadows the present spiritual condition of the Bride of Christ. So far, I've discussed midnight hour references within the New Testament, but in this video, I will highlight 3 references in the Hebrew Bible found in the book of Judges, 1 Kings, and the book of Ruth. These 3 books contain information dating 1,000 years before Christ, approximately. And the time frame is marked by the white oval on the 8th day clock of creation. But let's consider how the activity at midnight foreshadows current activity within the Bride of Christ, even though it's 3,000 years later. So in Judges 16, we discover Samson removing the doors of Gaza's city gates at midnight, along with its 2 posts. He pulled them up, bar and all, put them on his shoulders, and carried them to the top of the hill that is facing Hebron. So at midnight, we have 3 things to ponder here: the removal of city gates, a directional change, and a movement to a higher elevation. Now let's look at the yellow arrows on the 8th day clock. At her midnight hour in age-to-age timekeeping is the Bride of Christ slowly removing the doors of her city gates that once defined a spirit of exclusivity. Is she slowly opening herself up to a spirit of inclusivity without her gates being there? Have we noticed that the Bride of Christ is slowly changing direction? Are followers of the risen Christ focusing less on the past and more on the future? Less on the cross of crucifixion, which is an emblem of suffering and shame, and more on the time of the morning star, which is an emblem of light and love? Will her removal of doors and her change of direction eventually elevate the bride's reputation in the world, placing her on a hill facing Hebron, the holy city loved by Jews, Christians, and Muslims? Time will tell. Now the second reference is in 1 Kings 3. The story is of a prostitute who just gave birth to a baby boy, but she rolled over on him, suffocating her baby as they were both sleeping. Realizing this, she got up in the middle of the night and she took a living baby from another mother who lived with the prostitute in her house, the same house. And that other woman had also given birth to a son a few days apart from each other. So the mother who rolled over on her baby put her dead baby at the breast of the living baby's mother. So at midnight, we're introduced to this strange exchange. It's a switching of babies, a dead baby for a living baby. Will the Bride of Christ realize that prior to midnight, she has been sleeping soundly, perhaps so soundly that she nearly suffocated Jesus to the point of death again? At midnight, will she want to exchange a dead Jesus for a living Jesus? Again, will the followers of the risen Christ focus less on the cross of crucifixion, which is an emblem of suffering and shame, and more on the time of the morning star, which is an emblem of light and love? Time will tell. Now, the third reference is in Ruth 3, and it centers on a budding relationship between Ruth and a man named Boaz. Since Boaz was a relative of Ruth's late husband, he was eligible to become her kinsman redeemer, a cultural protection for widowed women. After a long day's work of separating barley from its stalk, Boaz fell asleep on the threshing floor, and Ruth joined him there. At midnight, Boaz woke up and was startled to find her lying at his feet. He said, "Who are you?" And she answered, "I am Ruth, your servant. Now here's the midnight hour request for marriage." She said, "Spread your cloak over me, for you are my kinsman redeemer." Now Boaz agreed to marry her, but the marriage did not take place at midnight. It took place in the morning. Is the bride of Christ, whose earthly husband or intended husband, Jesus, who died on the cross 2,000 years ago, is the bride of Christ ready to meet her living Redeemer at the midnight hour? Will the risen Christ fulfill the role of a bridegroom? We can trust that he will, but not until the end of time. The marriage will not take place at midnight. It will take place at the end of time, on the 8th day, which is also the dawn of a new day. So at midnight in age-to-age timekeeping, we need to wake up and pay attention. Are we seeing these things happening? These are foreshadowed activities in the Hebrew Bible. Do we see a removal of city gates? Do we see a change of direction, a change from past to future? Do we see an elevated reputation potentially happening in the world? An exchange of a dead Jesus for a living Christ, a request to marry her true bridegroom. Now, if we're not seeing these things yet, let's keep looking. Next, a plague of death and Jezebel's children.